Hey there, Drew here, and welcome back to the Drew Saur coaching channel. If this is your first time here, thanks for joining us. This channel is for those of us who want to have stellar careers with a little less stress and, if we can, a bit more fun. My job is to bring you ideas that'll help you look at the world in a new way. I promise that if you try them out, you'll start to see the professional world differently. And more importantly, they'll start to see you differently. So this video is part of my series on persuasive storytelling. Because to get anything done in our career, we need other people. So the question we're trying to answer here is, can I convince others to join me? And one of the fundamental ideas behind persuasion is it's all about how we approach somebody and the specific words that we use. And a lot of these videos are focused on, as is my practice, on helping people get to that executive level. So what I want to talk about today is one of the key sort of mindset differences for how you can present yourself as an executive. And that comes down to the difference between initiating ideas and executing ideas. And let's start with sort of the classic scenario, right? Obviously, I come from a technology background, but most of us throughout the beginning of our career are always rewarded for doing things, right? You start, you're an analyst, you're a programmer, you do well, you get promoted, you become a manager, you do even better, senior manager, even better, director, and then you kind of hit this point where you get tons of great feedback for getting stuff done, solving complex problems. Anytime there's an issue, let's have this person do it. Right? They're always great. They always get great feedback. And that works for the first, let's call it half of your career, right? To get you to that director level. But then there's this transition point. The executive mindset is different. The executive idea, what people are looking for from you, is different. And so there's a shift. And that shift is, as I said before, it's the difference between initiating ideas and executing ideas. Because at the executive level, right, no one will give you the thing to do. Right, so most of your career, here's a problem, let's get Drew on it, or let's get Sarah on it, whoever it is, right? And you are sort of given the problem. And when I talk to a lot of directors, which I do, right, and I say, tell me about your accomplishments, tell me about what you've done, a lot of it is about what did you do, right? That project you executed, that fix that you had, oh, I was asked to do this, I was asked to do that. And what happens is you don't focus on that first part, which is where did the idea come from? Because in the director level and below, what you're doing is you're solving problems that somebody has identified. And yes, you probably identified a bunch of optimizations, you've identified things. It's not that it doesn't happen, but what happens is what you talk about is the stuff you've done, not the stuff you've initiated. So what I want you to start to think about is, if you're positioning yourself as an executive and somebody says, tell me about some of the stuff you've done, tell me about yourself. What you want to focus is on those ideas that you have initiated. Right? So as an example, let's say you were assigned to a key project. There was a transformation that needed to happen, or a new software integration that needed to happen, and you were asked to do that. How do you tell the story? Right? So the classic way most directors would tell the story is, my boss called me up and he said, we have this huge problem, we need to get this thing done in 18 months, and we only had so much money, and the project was a mess. And he said, Drew, can you get in there and can you fix it? And then I tell my story about how they fixed it. But again, if you see the setup there, I was asked by somebody else to do something and then I nailed it, but I then did it. As opposed to, well, we had this major initiative, this major transformation integration that we had to do. My boss asked me to lead it. And so the first thing that I did was I went over, I met all the staff. I figured out here were the top 4 problems. I went to my boss and I said, look, if we're going to fix these problems, I need X amount of dollars. And then I did this, and then I did this. And all of what I've just said is about initiating, right? Finding the problems, identifying the things that needed to be done, getting the resources to do it, and then talking about the execution. So the idea here is make sure you focus on that initiation. How did you create new ideas? How did you find things that needed to be better? And then you can talk about how you fix them. But what most people miss is that first section. Because again, the true executive roles, if you're a CEO, right, nobody's telling you what to do. Nobody has a list of problems. You have to sit there and say, okay, with all the resources I have in this company, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to focus on product? Am I going to focus on marketing? Do I really need to focus on employees and recruiting to get new staff? You need to come up with the idea of, what do I do now? So when somebody's interviewing you for an executive role, the question they're asking is this person going to be able to come in here and identify all the stuff that we need to do? If you have a history of execution, I'm going to assume that you can do it. But the real question I'm asking is, can you come in here and help us identify what we need to do. So when you're interviewing or talking to somebody from an executive perspective, you want to focus on that initiation, right? Don't skip on that. Rather than 5% initiation, 95% execution, spend 20, 30, 40% of your time talking about how did you identify what needed to be done. And then you can add your standard answer of how you, of course, executed well and delivered all this value. That is clearly important too, but what most people miss is that first part. So what happens if you don't do this? If you don't do this, in the first 5 seconds of our conversation, I already kind of know that you're still at the director level, right? Because you're just talking about the stuff you do. You're talking about the problems you've solved. You're not telling me about how you could come in here and create the new ideas, find the things that I missed, right? If I'm the hiring manager, come up with things that will really transform this way. So how do you do that? And unfortunately, what happens is they immediately think of you as a non-executive because that's not the level of your thinking. You're not thinking about all the new things that you could do. So what's the exercise here? Next time, interviews is the most obvious place to do this, but just in your general conversations with your boss's boss, if you're trying to position yourself for an executive role, spend more of your time talking about the ideas, the initiation, the creation of what should we do, as opposed to the execution and the value that you bring, right? You need both, but spend more time on the initiation is one of the major differences between how an executive thinks about a problem and how a director or manager would think about the problem. So there you go. Try it out. Let me know in the comments how it goes. And as always, making that transformation is a journey, and it helps to have a partner. You can rope in a friend, you can hire a coach. And if you have any interest in working with me, feel free to go to drewsaur.com and we can schedule some time to chat. I look forward to seeing you next time.